F1 Formula 2026 cars. What you need to know. F1 is about to change forever, so get ready for what's coming next. F1 Formula 2026 cars. The 2026 season will bring the biggest shakeup in years, with cars that are smaller, lighter, and packed with futuristic tech. If you thought the last rule change in 2022 was big, this one is set to redefine the sport. So, what exactly is coming? And how will it change the racing we all love? First up, weight reduction. For years, F1 cars have been getting heavier, to the point where many drivers have complained that they feel sluggish compared to the beasts of the past. As a result, in 2026, the FIA is cutting 30 kilograms off the minimum weight. That might not sound like much, but in the world of F1, it's a massive deal. Lighter cars mean sharper handling, better braking, and most importantly, closer racing. But that's just the beginning. These new cars are also going to be physically smaller. The wheelbase is being cut down by 200 millimeters, while the overall width is shrinking by 100 millimeters. That might not sound like a dramatic change, but when you're threading a car through Monaco's tight streets, or battling wheel-to-wheel at Silverstone, those millimeters matter. Smaller cars should mean more overtakes, tighter battles, and fewer instances of drivers whining about how the cars are too big to race. Aerodynamics. And let's talk about aerodynamics. The 2026 regulations introduce something F1 has never had before: active aero. This means drivers will be able to switch between high downforce and low drag modes at the push of a button. Think of it like the current DRS system, but way more advanced. This isn't just about making overtaking easier, it's about efficiency. The FIA is calling it X mode for low drag and Z mode for high downforce. X mode kicks in on the straights, letting the car slice through the air like a missile. But as soon as you hit the braking zone, the car switches to Z mode, giving you all the grip you need to throw it into a corner. This tech is meant to counteract a big issue with the new engines, which rely much more on electrical power than ever before. Speaking of engines, this is where things get really interesting. The current hybrid power units are already some of the most advanced engines on the planet, but in 2026, they're going to be completely reworked. The turbocharged V6s will still be around, but their power output is being slashed by about 200 horsepower. Sounds bad, right? Well, here's the twist. The electrical side of the hybrid system is getting a huge upgrade. Right now, F1's battery system provides about 160 horsepower. In 2026, that number jumps to a monstrous 475 horsepower. That means nearly half the car's total power will come from electric energy. And the way that energy is deployed is changing too. Say goodbye to DRS as we know it. Instead, we're getting something called manual override, which is basically a push-to-pass system. When two cars are racing, the driver behind will get extra electrical power to help them make a move. It's like a turbo boost in a video game, but real. In other words, when they are racing, the lead car's electrical power starts to taper off at 180 miles per hour and completely cuts out at 220 miles per hour. But the chasing car? They get to keep their full power up to 209 miles per hour. This should make straight-line battles way more intense, since the chasing car will always have a power advantage, at least until they get ahead. The fuel. Another massive change? The fuel. Starting in 2026, F1 is moving to fully sustainable synthetic fuels. This means the sport will be running on gasoline that produces zero net carbon emissions. This is a big step toward making F1 more environmentally friendly, but it also means teams will have to completely rethink how they approach fuel efficiency. Since the new engines will rely more on battery power, fuel flow is being reduced, and turbo pressure is being limited. The end result? Drivers will have to manage their energy deployment even more carefully, making strategy a much bigger factor in races. Tires. And then there are the tires. Pirelli is developing new rubber that's 25 millimeters narrower at the front and 30 millimeters narrower at the rear. The idea is to keep grip levels similar to what we have now, but with less rolling resistance. In other words, less rolling resistance means less drag, which means higher top speeds. Combine that with the active aero and increased electrical power, and we could be seeing some of the fastest straight-line speeds in F1 history. Safety. Of course, with all these changes, safety is also getting an upgrade. The new cars will feature a two-stage crash structure designed to absorb impacts better. The goal? To make sure that if a car has a big crash, it can take a second hit without completely falling apart. It's a small but crucial change that could make a big difference in high-speed accidents. But don't think the teams can just start designing these new cars right away. Aerodynamic development is completely frozen until late 2025. This is to stop teams from throwing all their resources into the 2026 cars too early, which could ruin the competition for the next 2 seasons. However, teams can start working on the mechanical side of things as soon as the regulations are finalized. 2026 new plan. So, what does all this mean for the racing? The FIA is confident that these changes will make F1 more exciting, more competitive, and more unpredictable. They've admitted that while the 2022 rules made a step toward better racing, they weren't perfect. The goal now is to get it right. The cars will have less downforce overall, meaning they'll be harder to drive. But with the extra power from the electrical system, they'll also be faster in a straight line. In other words, a car that's more challenging to handle, but also more rewarding for the best drivers on the grid. And let's not forget about the competitive order. Right now, Red Bull is dominating, but big rule changes always shake things up. Remember how Mercedes went from midfield runners to a dominant force in 2014? Or how Red Bull struggled at first when the hybrid era began? With these new regulations, anything can happen. And since teams will be developing these cars under the cost cap, smaller teams have a real chance to catch up. The days of unlimited spending are gone, which means the smartest teams, not just the richest, will come out on top. So, will these changes make F1 better? The FIA certainly thinks so. F1, drivers react to 2026 regulations. The reactions from F1 drivers to the 2026 regulations are a mixed bag of cautious optimism, uncertainty, and classic F1 skepticism. The 2026 cars will shed 30 kilograms, and while this is seen as a step in the right direction, it's far from a game changer. Daniel Ricciardo was on board. Those little things are in the right direction because I love the 2016 car, which was certainly narrower and lighter. This isn't going to be as extreme as that, but at least it's a step in the right direction. But it wasn't long before the doubts crept in. Lewis Hamilton wasn't getting too carried away with the 30-kilogram loss. 30 kilos is good, said Nico Hülkenberg, but it's not the world. In fact, Alex Albon pointed out a crucial detail. I don't think that weight comes for free. The main concern? How will teams manage to shave off those 30 kilograms without sacrificing performance elsewhere? Fernando Alonso seemed even less convinced. He threw cold water on the whole idea, suggesting that the added weight from the bigger batteries could negate the reduction altogether. It seems at the moment probably, to the team, is an impossible target, Alonso said. But being the eternal optimist of F1, he added, as always in Formula 1, this impossible in 2024 will become reality in 2026. Then there's the dramatic switch from the drag reduction system to the manual override, a move that promises more freedom, but raises questions. For Alonso, this was a welcome change. If it's more total power and a bit more freedom on the energy usage in terms of the race tactics, I think that's positive, he said, clearly intrigued by the possibilities. Valtteri Bottas agreed, adding, it gives drivers more freedom to deploy energy how they see fit, which is a positive. But not everyone was so enthusiastic. Yuki Tsunoda had a very different take. He raised concerns about the complexity of managing this new system compared to the simplicity of DRS. I assume it'll be much more difficult or much busier to manage electric, boost, or all that sort of stuff. A lot more things to learn about. It wasn't just about the cars or the tech. Drivers were also wary of the inevitable dominance that comes with sweeping regulation changes. The pace between the cars is extremely tight, said Alex Albon, noting that this may reset the grid and spread everyone out again. Fernando Alonso echoed the sentiment, voicing his hope that the new rules wouldn't lead to another Mercedes or Red Bull-like domination. What we want is just close competition, Alonso added. Multiple race winners, opportunities for everyone. We don't want to have domination of 3-4 years, where only one team, one driver, or two drivers can win. So, hopefully, the 2026 rules can help on that, which is the only thing that Formula 1 is missing. The rest is great. In addition, Bottas, whose Sauber team is in last place, pointed out the potential for underdogs. A new era of regulations is always exciting, brings opportunities to different teams. It's nice to see a change. And then there's the debate on innovation. Some drivers, like Alonso, were in favor of simpler regulations, advocating for more freedom in design. He even referenced the six-wheeled Tyrrell P34 and the days when teams could choose between tire suppliers as an example of a time when F1 was more innovative. "I like that kind of freedom that you can choose something," Alonso said. Furthermore, Alex Albon echoed the call for simplicity, favoring more standardized parts to make things less complicated. "I'd rather just have a bit more simple engines, a little bit more standardized parts within the engines or whatever it may be," Albon said. But then there's Oscar Piastri, who saw the bigger picture, the role of F1 as an innovator. "The sport has an important role in pushing automotive engineering forward," Piastri said, acknowledging that, while the complexity might hurt the racing, it's still a necessary step. Hamilton, ever the visionary, also saw the upside of the new direction. Increased battery power and the use of sustainable fuels is a really bold step forward. But of course, he added the caveat that they have to get the racing right. "We just have to make sure the cars are efficient, fast, and a natural step forward, and that the actual racing is improved." The big question remains: will these changes actually deliver on their promises? Or will they lead to yet another era of domination by the teams that nail the regulations first? Only time will tell. Do you think this is a good move for F1 Formula? Drop your thoughts below. And if you're a true F1 Formula fanatic, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more in-depth stories on legendary F1 moments.